What's up, everyone? So I don't even know how to get started. This is going to be an awesome video. I'm going to be talking about the entire medical school application process, just the entire timeline of it. But before I do that, I think one of the biggest reasons I even wanted to make a video was to unveil this new intro by my cousin brother, Parth Druthani. He was awesome. He made this for me, so check it out, and then I'll lead straight into the video. Alright, how epic was that? That's pretty sick. So I'm super happy about that. Super grateful that my brother was able to make that for me. But anyway, let me move on to my topic of today, which is the entire med school application timeline. Right now, it's actually the end of April, and believe it or not, the application stuff is going to start opening up in early May, and there's a ton of stuff you can be doing then. And so I decided to tell you about my experience because the more you know about my experience, the more you can plan ahead and ultimately make the most out of your experience. Because again, had I known any of this while I was doing the process, I would have been much better off. So might as well impart the knowledge I gained to you so you can hopefully learn from it. So with that, I'm actually going to talk about the entire med school application timeline from the first day I started to, I guess, right now. But obviously you'll realize that that's a lot of time. So that's impossible to cover in one video. So right now, today, I'm only going to do part one. What is part one, you might ask? Well, part one is going to be exclusively just covering, leading up to the application cycle, because that's where most of you are right now. Either you're thinking of applying or you might be applying. And I'm going to talk about the beginning, and then part one will end right before interviews start coming up. So I will talk about now all the way through secondary season, which is a long time, and hopefully that'll still be informative for many of you. So with that, let's get started. Let's start with a basic overview of what this entire process is going to be about. Again, it's going to be showing you my personal story from start to finish, and because it's personal, I want you to know it's applicable to you, but just take it with a grain of salt, because obviously you and I are not entirely the same. We're obviously pre-medical students, but there's always differences. So I'm going to start with, obviously, the start of any application cycle is going to be when you fill out your AMCAS application. I'm going to be defining that as the May of year one, because believe it or not, this entire application process spans more than, like, I started mine in 2016 and it's 2017 now, and I'm still kind of finishing up. So the point is, the end is when I make my final decision, which is going to be as late, it can be as late of June of year two. So just for nomenclature, I wanted to put that out there so you know how I'm defining my time. And this video is going to be from early February to early August of year one. So there's a lot of stuff that's going to be happening that you can plan for that I've already talked about a bit. And I'm going to tell you about what I did from February to August of last year, of 2016, while I was prepping for my application. And hopefully you can learn a bit from it. So the start is from February to April, and believe it or not, there's not much I actually did. I did not do as much. There's some of you right now who reach out to me, giving me your entirely completed applications. There's some of you who reach out to me that, don't even know what's happening. Don't worry, I did not do anything, okay? One of the things I did do, though, I found documentation of this, is that I bought the medical student admissions requirement, the entire booklet, on February 1st, 2016. And because I bought it early, I was able to research and make a list of schools. So I'll make a separate video on, how to make that list of schools, but I made that list relatively early. I didn't know it would be finalized, but I made a list of about like 45 schools. I didn't apply to all 45, but it was just kind of, it's out there. These schools are the ones I'm thinking of applying to, right? And then from March to April, I actually reached out to only about 5 letter of rec writers, and I said, hey, would you be willing to write me a letter of rec for me for med school? And they agreed to write me one, but I never actually saw anything. So I know that these individuals agreed to write letters for me, but unfortunately, it's very hard to make sure your letter of rec writers actually end up writing the letter on time, and I'm going to get into that. But basically, from February to April, that's all I did. I did not do anything else. So if you're in these shoes right now, fantastic. If you're behind, it's not that hard to catch up. And if you're ahead, okay, don't even bother. You are a stud, okay? So that's all I did from February to April. Now let me tell you a bit of afterward. May is when the fight begins, and that's why I'm so happy I'm publishing this video now, because the fight has not begun yet if you're watching this early. All right, but May is when the fight begins. And the reason I say that is because the AMCAS application that you're actually going to submit opens on May 1st, 2016. That's when it opened for me. But just because it opens does not mean that you can submit it. Okay, usually when it opens, all it means is that you can type in stuff and potentially start filling it out, but you still cannot submit it. More importantly, right now, if any of you go to AMCAS and say AMCAS application login, it'll still say AMCAS 2017 login. So that is not for you. That is for me. And if you are as unknowledgeable as I was when I started this, I didn't even know what cycle I was. Okay, people will be like, "What cycle are you applying?" And I'm like, "I don't know, this one." And then be like, "No, what year?" And I'd be like, 2016, and they'd be like, "No, technically you're 2017 because your cycle name is for the year that you're applying into." So for those of you applying like now, this upcoming cycle, you're 2018. I was 2017. So the AMCAS 2017 application is live now, but the AMCAS 2018 application will likely open up on May 1st. Okay, but again, just because it opens up does not mean you can submit it. More importantly, another thing that's important is the receipt for transcripts also opens up on May 1st, 2016. So if you have your transcript ready by then, send it over and AMCAS will be gladly willing to accept it. All right, so with that being said, let me tell you a bit about me. I had no idea what the AMCAS application looked like. Again, many of you already have my AMCAS application, so you can get a head start on this because you already know what the AMCAS application looks like. You can start filling it out. But I had no idea. So the first photo documentation I have of me filling out the application, this is from really old Snapchats and stuff I had to dig up, was on May 3rd, 2016. And trust me, I was not being an overachiever. I wasn't filling in the important stuff. I was literally just filling in my name, parents' information, languages, the speed. I was filling all that stuff. All right. I had not started pre-writing anything ahead of time. So that's pretty much all I did in May. I started filling out the AMCAS, but only the basics of it. On May 26, 2016, I also bought Interfolio for my letter of recommendation. If you don't know what Interfolio is, don't worry, I'll make a separate video on it. But for your letter of recs, you need a way to get all of them to AMCAS. And the way I did it was through Interfolio, and I bought it on May 26th, which is already relatively late, but who cares? Basically, I bought it on May 26th. I sent invite to all my interviewers, but that does not mean I had my letters of rec submitted. I just sent them an invite, which meant, oh, Prereq wants you to write a letter of rec for him. Would you be willing to do that? And when they say yes, it says, oh, they agreed, but you have no letters yet. All right, this is what I mean by the fight begins in May. You can prepare for this by doing it way earlier, but I did not do it earlier than that. Nonetheless, no harm, no foul. I still got into med school, so don't worry if you're behind. Don't worry if you're ahead. It's gonna standardize out, okay? But behind the scenes, here's all the stuff I was working behind the scenes. So those are just the big pinpoints. But behind the scenes, I was working on the entire AMCAS application. All right, I graduated mid-May, so I didn't start working on most of this until after May 15th. Because before that, we were super happy. We're graduating. We're going crazy. But after that, I was like, I got to get my stuff done. So I was working on my personal statement. I personally had 11 drafts. Many of you have more. Many of you have fewer. Trust me, it's not number of drafts you have. It's entirely dependent on what you think is fit. I also started working on the work/activity sections, writing down what activities I wanted. Many of you, again, who have the AMCAS application of my own, know what I wrote. I'd be more than willing to disclose it to anyone. Just email me. But again, the internet is a scary place. I don't want to just make it available to anyone. I want to make sure you are coming from the right place. All right. The other thing I was also doing behind the scenes is I was really bugging my professors for those letters of rec. You have to get on them, okay? That's because professors are busy and you have to respect that. But trust me, if you don't make sure you are known as a potential thing they have to work for, they're too busy to care, and that's not saying that professors don't care about you. It's just that they have a lot on their plate, so you have to keep reminding them. Another thing I was also doing was bugging people to edit. You have to edit your stuff. Personal statement has to be edited. Don't want to make any stupid mistakes because that personal statement goes out to every med school you apply to. And more importantly, that's your first impression, right? You got to edit. You got to get editing from students who you know are real with you. I had a really great mentor. Shout out to him. But he was very real to me. He always told me what sounded right. He always told me what sounded wrong. He was very blunt about it. I wrote my personal statement about a tragic thing in my family that happened, but he's like, that's too cliche. There's too many dead grandma stories. And he was very blunt about it. And that really helped me realize what I needed to write about and how I needed to make sure my personal statement was unique. I'll likely make a video on that later, but you got to have edits from people who you know will be real and tell you the truth when it needs to be told. And the last thing was, I also got editing from students already in med school because obviously they are successful. So why not, right? And so that's pretty much what I was doing in May. It was a busy time, but got a lot of this stuff done. In June, it gets real. So if in May you're preparing, June it gets insanely real because AMCAS for me opened for submission on June 7th, 2016. I didn't feel ready to submit by then, and if you've watched any of my other videos, which I highly recommend you do, you have to submit early because believe it or not, the earlier you submit, the better it's going to be. I submitted about 3 days afterward, which is amazing. You know, most people don't actually submit that early. I think I was able to get everything together in time. I had the right support, and I submitted that to 22 schools initially, but then I went back and I added 3 more. So even though you submit your AMCAS on a certain day, you don't have to decide permanently what schools you are applying to. I selected 22 initially. I sent it all out. Well, it doesn't get sent out actually. You're going to see there's a difference. But I selected 22 schools and then I added 3 more schools afterward. And the verification process is different. So just because you submit does not mean your AMCAS is verified. All right, verification process means they actually have to go through the entire application, make sure your classes are right, make sure everything is right, and after that, they will move forward. But I will say that to submit your application, you do not need any of your letters of rec because I had 0 out of my 10 letters of rec submitted. You do not need 10. I did not use all 10. I just got 10 to be safe. I only ended up using about 5 of my letters of rec, but I had none of them submitted when I submitted my AMCAS. And basically, one of my transcripts was still waiting to get there. And that's another big deal. When you submit, you don't need your transcript, but believe it or not, to verify your application, they need your transcript. So you need to make sure you submit at a time that you know AMCAS already has your transcript, because if they don't have your transcript, they will not approve your or verify your application. The entire verification process takes some time. I think I got lucky because my transcript reached there right when I submitted. It reached there around like the 11th or 12th. And that's why they were able to verify it within 17 days. Some of my other friends had to wait more than a month, more than 6 weeks to get their AMCAS verified because they didn't have their transcript in. So you need your transcript and you need your entire AMCAS submitted, but you do not need your letter of rec set for your AMCAS to get verified. Okay, at least for me personally. Um, Basically, overall, once my AMCAS is verified, the verification process starts exponentially increasing as the longer you wait to submit your primary. Remember, I submitted mine 3 days late, but if you wait any more than that, the verification process takes even longer because there's a ton of applications in front of you. Nonetheless, I got mine verified on June 27th, 2017. So now let's talk about what's happening next. So behind the scenes in June, after I submitted my AMCAS application, I actually didn't do as much as you might think I did. Mostly I was just bothering my letter of rec writers to finish their letters and kind of reminding them, oh, by the way, I exist. Please. The other thing is I tried, but I never really did this. And I know some of you are better than me, so kudos to you, but I tried to pre-write secondaries because the prompts don't change. All you have to Google is the school name, 2017 SDN, and the first page that comes up is almost always the legit prompt. But I tried, I just couldn't do it. There was a part of me was like, what if it switches? Then you'd be wasting your time. But they never really switch. So I just never ended up pre-writing anything, and it was a bad idea. But I tried with Washington University in St. Louis. I was like, oh, they're secondary. It probably won't change. So I opened it up and then I looked at it and I was like, I can do it later. And then I just procrastinated. So I never actually did anything else really in June. But I told you my application was verified on June 27th, right? So believe it or not, when my application was verified, oh my God, I regretted this decision so much. I regretted it so much because just on that day, like almost instantaneously, I got 3 secondaries. Because some schools, the moment they get your primary application, will just send you another secondary. They'll be like, finish this secondary. And you'll be like, wow, I was not expecting this. So I got 3 right away on that day. And then over the span of like the next week or two, I got 25 other secondaries. And every secondary has like a ton of questions. It's unique and you have to figure it out. So I told you here, most schools will send you a secondary instantly based on the moment they get you your app. Most schools also want it back in 2 weeks. So believe it or not, for me, I sent my primary to a ton of schools and I got a ton of secondaries back. And it was just so many secondaries at once, I was overwhelmed. So that's why I encourage you to pre-write some of them because it can really help alleviate some of the stress, which I just did not handle very well. Some schools will not send you secondaries right away. So there are some schools that actually screen your primary, and based on certain characteristics, if they like you, they will send you a secondary. So in my case, there were all the UC schools, almost every UC screens, I believe. So that means they will screen your primary, and if they like you, they will give you a secondary. Similarly with Vanderbilt, I think they also screen your primary and give you a secondary based on your primary. And the last one is California North State University of Medicine. This is a new school, but it's also in California. And as to my knowledge, these are only schools that I applied to, and therefore I have firsthand experience. They also screen. So that's all I know. But hopefully, this provides you with an insight into why you should pre-write your secondaries, because the moment your AMCAS is verified, those schools are not holding back. They're just going to be like boom, 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 and you're going to be like, what the hell is going on? Because there were days where I got like 5 secondaries, and I'm like, I don't even know where to begin. Okay, so make sure you know that. Anyway, from late June to early August, all you're going to be doing is secondaries, and that is immensely important. You got to finish those secondaries on time. You got to go ham. All right. Like the first secondary I submitted was on June 29th. That was 2 days after my first secondary came in. And that was for Mayo Clinic. And the only reason I was able to submit that so early was, first of all, they didn't even have a secondary. They just said, pay us money and we'll review your application. And I was like, done. I will pay you money, review my application. Good thing you don't have a secondary. And then the last secondary I submitted was Northwestern University on August 13th, 2016. So you'll see for 45 days, I was just doing secondaries. And I think I only submitted to 25 schools. I don't remember. I might not have had the balls to finish all of my secondaries just because there's so many. But overall, I submitted some secondaries up to 4 weeks late. You don't even want to know. If you want more information on this, reach out to me. I'm a nice guy. I will tell you everything. My email's in the About section. So yeah. Overall, that's when secondaries come in, and that's why I encourage you to pre-write them. Anyway, behind the scenes, aside from finishing secondaries, I was also getting all my secondaries edited. So getting your secondaries edited is something that some students decide to do, others don't. I wanted to get mine edited, which is why even though I finishes my secondaries within, I don't know, however long, I always sent them out, got them proofread by people who were either at that school or people who I didn't bug as often, because you have 25 secondaries. You don't want the same person reading them. They will hate you. So I had different people read different things. I also still had my letters of rec in order. Yes, some of them were still not submitted even by early August. So that is another thing you want to make sure you're on top of. Here's one thing. If you want, you can take a screenshot of this, or you can just contact me, and this PowerPoint will be linked in the description anyway, so you can use it. But there are secondaries that have long prompts, which are like essays, really long essays, and these are the schools that, of the schools I applied to, these are the schools that had really long prompts. So U Chicago, Yale, UCSD, Vanderbilt, UCSF, Harvard, and Case Western all had relatively long essay prompts. Other schools have very short prompts. They'll be like, what's your biggest challenge? 100 words or 200 words. And that included UC Davis, Mayo Clinic, USC, Cornell, UNC, Stanford, Baylor, BU, UMich, Icahn School of Medicine, UPenn, UC Riverside, UC Irvine, Hopkins, WashU, UPitt, and Northwestern. So hopefully that provides you with a bigger insight. If you actually want the prompts, again, just Google it. You will find them. They don't change that often. Overall, prioritize secondaries that are for schools that are rolling. Okay, I realized this after I was done, and I realized you should totally prioritize it for schools that are rolling. Some med schools are actually not rolling. Okay, and for that, I would say you don't have to prioritize the secondaries as much as you should for rolling schools. So like UMich or UC Davis or UCLA or any UC, they're pretty rolling. And what that means is the class starts filling up pretty quickly. And by that time, if you submit your secondary later, you'll get an interview later. And that time, if the class is mostly full, you're interviewing for fewer slots. On the other hand, schools that are not rolling, including Mayo, Harvard, Cornell, Yale, UPenn, all these big schools, because they're not rolling, what that means is even though you get an interview later, which is usually a result of you submitting your secondary later, it doesn't usually impact you as heavily, primarily because they make all the decisions at once. So that's pretty much all I have to say about the secondaries and how you have to prioritize them. If you have more questions, reach out to me. But overall, this is just, I'm telling you, I only talked about like 3 months and it already took up like 17 minutes. So hopefully you found this helpful. Please let me know if you have any questions, and I will make another video soon. Thanks for watching.